Hello and welcome to the Third Option International live Facebook chat series. Sue and Randy Pinto here, along with Mike and Andrea Buckley. And this week we're talking topic 12, which is feelings and the hurt cycle. And of course, before we talk about that, we do want to go back and review briefly last week's topic, which was conflict resolution and how to fight fair. So Mike and Andrea, welcome. And can you go ahead and start us off?
Well, we're glad to be here, guys. And last week's topic, conflict and how to fight fair, is one that we talked about last week. About everybody wants to go to that one because they want to fix that first. But it is a process, and that's why it's down the line 11 sessions before it's introduced. But the solutions to conflict resolution are consensus and compromise. We each have to give a little, and we share where we're coming from. We take turns, and then we turn it around, trade off, and start back over again. Sometimes we have to make a policy or the rules that we have to fight, and then agree to disagree if we just can't come to a solution to the issue. And then maybe we have to take a break and come back to it another time. That's fine. At the end of it all, if we just can't make the progress, we'll seek professional help, maybe a counselor or a mediator to get through it. There's a couple ground rules that we went over. It's one issue at a time. Don't try to change the world in one sitting. We don't judge up the past. The past is gone. No blame games going on. We learned that in topic 2, not to blame. And not about power and control. Who's going to run this whole show here? We both have to be part of the solution and attack the problem, not the person. And then the process itself is to communicate, is to define the problem. That's sometimes where we forget, what is the problem? We might be thinking of 2 different problems, and we got to make sure we know which one it is. And then we both list possible solutions, and we look at the pros and cons of all those solutions, and then we have to make a decision. So that's it in a nutshell. We can't really spend any more time on that. So that's why we're going to go forward to topic 12, which is feelings in the hurt spiral.
Yes, and I'd add one more thing. We kind of reinforce it. It's been introduced already, but in this process, how important is it that we make I statements? Very important when it comes to conflict resolution. We've developed them. Now we have to start using them every day in the daily challenges that we have, because we have them.
Right. And I think one thing, especially with the I statements and with that conflict resolution, is starting small, starting with something that's not a huge fight, but starting small. It gives you time to practice with those I statements. So moving on to this week's topic, which is that feelings and the hurt cycle, hurt spiral. Where do we start with this?
Well, the hurt spiral is probably the most destructive behavior pattern that we could have. And I guess it's best described as a get even mentality, tit for tat, and we're going to look at identifying ourselves as either maybe a lion personality or a turtle personality. Do we withdraw like a turtle when it comes to being hurt, or do we turn around and fight like a lion because somebody stomped on us? So I think we start there. What do we do? What's our response when we're hurt?
And sometimes what's worse, 2 lions, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You could have that.
Yeah.
Right. If you got 2, and while it may not seem worse, 2 turtles, because then it's never resolved, right? So yeah, any combination.
I'm very quiet, very quiet.
Yeah. So no combination is healthy, right?
Right. No, neither one really doesn't work. They're both not the answer.
Right. I mean, so we have to look at ourselves and say, are we the fight or are we the flight person? And we both have to, and each situation could be different, but we both have to realize what our role is when we do that. And do we ignore it, pretend it's not there? or do we really have to come together to do it? And to do that, we have to make a change in ourselves. The lions have to kind of have to slow down and listen a little bit. And the turtle has to stick that neck out and stop being in that shell. So those are the things that we are looking at.
You know, we have this word, you could probably use any buzzword that you want in a relationship, but it was introduced to us, so we use it, we exercise it when our feelings get hurt. And it's a simple word, ouch. We use the word ouch. Instead of that reflex, like somebody putting the hammer to your knee that you just want to kick back, it's just that pause moment, press the pause button, and instead of responding with a real quick, nasty word or remark, or push or a shove, you just take that moment, make the decision, and just declare, ouch, okay? So the other person can realize, wait a minute here, what just happened? And then we talk about the opportunity to be able to exercise or begin a conversation instead of just a reaction. So we want to talk a little bit about, this technique was talked to us about, and you guys have heard it too, this layers of emotions that we have when we're in this process of feeling hurt. It's a cycle, it's a spiral. So what are the emotions that draw us into this? And we find ourselves repeating patterns of behavior. So it's not like a one-time occurrence that I did something that hurt Mike, or something that he did that hurt me, but it becomes a pattern of behavior. And so we're going to look at, how can we get in touch with the feelings that might be going on inside the person?
Okay, so
True. And you know, I see you have the third option, balance line, up on the board. You know, we said it just earlier. On one side, you have the person that wants to fight or get angry, sometimes physical, which is wrong. And then the flight says, I'm going to the hills. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to be part of that. But the solution, that third option, is dialogue. It's okay. We have to calm down. We have to speak. We have to listen. And all of the topics that we've had before that leads up to this. The dialogue we want to take place in an unemotional state. Because when we look at the hurt spiral, the first hurt is generally unintentional. We don't mean to hurt the person, but we do something not thinking. Guys are famous for this, you know, bumping into somebody or you know, saying something that they really didn't mean. And then the spouse takes it like, wow, where did you come up with that? And I'm not going to talk to you for days now. That's not good. So those are the things that we look at there. Andrea, why don't you talk a little bit about peeling the onion?
Yeah, well, I like your word too. That's another word you could say instead of ouch. Wow. Sometimes that gets somebody's attention, like, wow, I can't believe what just took place. And then the other person has to stop and say, oh, what just took place? Did I say something? Did I do something? So whatever the word, the process that Mike is asking, we call it like peeling the onion. So everybody can visualize this onion, especially those of us that are in the kitchen, chopping them and peeling them. You got it, and you've got several layers to this onion. So why is that like how we feel in this relationship? Well, I have a good example. Mike had an example too, so we thought we'd share our example. This happens frequently in our relationship. I'll be saying something in a conversation. It could be just the two of us, but more often it's with other people. And as I'm trying to finish my story or whatever it is that was the thought I had, he'll come in and finish it for me and talk right over me. And so this pattern has happened to us quite a few times, and we've talked about it a few times, and I have gotten hurt about it a few times. So I chose this to think about it. What are the feelings I have? The first response I have is I'm angry. I'm angry because it happens a lot. I have tried to talk about it, but it keeps happening. But underneath that layer, I feel hurt. And the reason I feel hurt is I think I feel unappreciated when he treats me that way. But there's still another layer under the hurt. Under that, I feel frustrated and disrespected. They're kind of both together, those feelings. And I think I feel frustrated because I see myself as allowing that pattern to happen. Then underneath that layer, I have another deeper layer where I feel insecure and unimportant. Like maybe I must not say things right, or he could say it better. So I feel less than. And that leads to probably a core feeling where when this happens, I basically feel kind of shut down or rejected. But what I'm really hoping for underneath that, what we're trying to get at with this process is just discover, peel those layers back and discover, I really just want to be loved and accepted by Mike. That's what I hope for. And if I do this process and I follow my feelings back, feel them back to that core, that's what I want to communicate to him, to be able to tell him all those feelings and hope that he'll accept those and understand, and we can work at communicating to find a better solution to that.
With the peeling the onion, because like you said, you start at that outer layer, hurt, and I feel hurt because of this. It's hard probably in the midst of a particularly aggressive situation or a really hot topic that you're struggling with. Is there a best time to do this? Do you do it right then? Do you wait?
Well, not even, at a hot time. You've alluded to a couple times talking here, and we have in the past, and I think you said the word, Andrea. So do we react or do we respond, right? So this process, you have to bypass the reaction. And earlier you said, tit for tat or insult, and those are reactions, right? So we start reacting. So you have to do away with that, which is a very hard thing to do because it's subconscious and emotional. So it's very hard to do whether it's big or small. And the other part of peeling this onion, so I think yours was a good example, Andrea. So those are feelings, they're real. That's your perspective. Meanwhile, I know if Mike's like me, I'm just doing this. I'm not aware of all that, right? So how do you make these things, communicate these things without insulting somebody? Well, I didn't mean any of that. Right? So it can really, so it's very delicate, a proposition to try to start the process, to stop and carefully not be emotional. And as you said, Andrew, using the all I statements, the feelings, and then we want to bring them together, but we got to keep them separate, right? It's not about you, it's about me. That's why the I statement. So it's I don't know if it's ever not gonna be a heated moment once you try to dig into it, right?
Well, and like when you said before, like using that key word, whether it's ouch or wow, and of course, just depending on how you say that can even cause problems. Wow,
Want me to show you?
Yeah, demonstrate. But then I think also, like Randy was saying, that reaction is, I think maybe it's that phrase where you say to the person, okay, I'm going to try not to react. Give me 10 seconds so I can respond, and starting to get into that habit with like the ouch, starting to get into that habit. I'm going to try not to react. Give me a little time so I can respond. Something like that.
Yeah, well, everybody's different. And I think at different times in my life, I've reacted differently. I'm not usually a crier immediately, but some people, if you hurt their feelings, they cry immediately. That's their first layer. Mine is usually more anger. So the anger, all these programs and these skills we've been learning, I've learned to identify the anger and work at being able, as soon as I get that sensation, all the inner signs and all the red flags, I recognize I'm angry. So I could say that first layer out loud. Mike, I feel really angry. And what that does, it's starting to signal to me, well, why am I feeling angry? If I can say it, then maybe I can get to the next sentence better with an I statement. After I say, I feel angry, I really need to sit and talk to you about this. Can we sit down and talk about it? So to open, if they're saying open dialogue, that's the answer. Just open it. And it is a process. And I think like the I statements and these other tools we're getting, the more we use them, the less apt to really get off track and not be able to try to get to the core of what these are. I don't do it every time. I still get angry, but you know what happens? And you can probably say it an hour or two later or the next day, right away. I'm like, you know, I was thinking about why I got so angry. And then this process comes out. So it's not meant to say, oh, yeah, we kick right into drive and A, B, C, and D happens. But over time, it comes more familiar to us.
When we were first married, we'd get into an argument. And then Andrea would cry. And when she would cry, I said, well, shut that whole down now. I can't win this argument now because she cried. I can't win it. And I said, so that would make me angry. So that just didn't work. But as you said, Randy, before, whenever we make decisions based on an emotional reaction, we almost always make the wrong decision. That's just the way it works. So if we are able to respond and think about it, sometimes that means that we're in the heat of this little tiff that's going to really start escalating. We have to say, you know something? This isn't a good time to do this. Let's wait till the kids are in bed or till we're alone after dinner. And maybe we can come back with cool heads and cool hearts and do this so that we can then understand. And that's the goal of all of the Third Option series, is not only to communicate, but to understand where our spouse is coming from. And when we do that, that's when we make progress and we try to go forward and improve our relationship and improve our marriage.
Yeah, and that all goes back to feeling as if you've been understood, feeling as if you've been heard. Often that goes back to, that's what love feels like. That's when you feel loved.
Yes. And there's degrees of the hurts. So sometimes if it's just a small hurt and somebody says, ouch, if you get used to at least speaking up for your feeling, the other person, like Mike said, it wasn't intentional. So if that one little jar, the other person could hear that word and say, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I didn't really mean it that way. Some of the things can just stop right there because it's a minor thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that we've talked about it before, and I remember from sitting in sessions, to me it was very important, which is we might not be at the same place at the same time with trying to actually go through this process. So just because I'm ready for this process and going through peeling the onion doesn't mean that she is, or she might be going through a part of this that I'm mentally not there yet, and it might not work for that reason, and we can't misconstrue that as failure, right? So we're gonna have realizations and awareness at different stages, not always equal. So so just once doesn't mean it doesn't work, right? So it's a growing process from each person, and they don't always grow at the same rate, right? I'm still waiting, but you know, I'm patient. See, we want to use.
Randy,
Wow.
ideally, this could take place at the same time, though. After one person goes through that, I think it's intended that Mike would be able to say to me after I've gone through that, well, you know what? Here's how I feel. And then I have to listen. I really think that, you know, it can open up that scenario down the road.
And that, you're right, by design, that's the hope. If Mike doesn't react emotionally when you start that and be hurt because of that, right? So there's what can happen. So I guess what I'm saying is patience. Whoever starts the cycle doesn't mean starts the process, doesn't mean it's going to work that first time, because the other person might have to go through that before they get to it as well. So yeah, that's the hope, that's the design.
But again, if you notice that your spouse or your partner or whatever is trying to do these steps, trying to utilize these skills that you've learned over the course of the last 12 topics, then that's a win. right there, that's a win, that at least we're willing. That if you're both willing, that's the first step. And that's the beginning of getting to these, becoming more, having these skills be more effective and forming a better relationship.
Well, this is why the in a community with a group of people, and as we're showing here, we could talk about this for a long time. We said this is a short session. We could talk about this specific piece of it for a long time, right? So in the communities, when you do these in the biweekly meetings, there are, as you said before we got online, Mike, was there different skits where we talk through these and give examples of how you go through this. So we're really just scratching the surface. So there's a lot to it that can be useful, and the whole video gets in it in more depth. So I guess in my mind, I just want to say there is a process. Just because I start the process doesn't mean it's going to work and everybody's on board at the same time that I start the process, right? And I have to keep that in mind.
Yes, and like everything else we say in third option, this is normal. This is normal for relationships. So if we're experiencing it and people who are listening are saying, oh yeah, I see myself, we're in this too. Well, guess what? Everybody is. So this is like real good medicine for all of us that this works and this is our goal.
Yeah, everybody is. So it doesn't matter what Facebook is showing you, because
Yeah, that's
everybody
right.
has their stuff, right? And
We're all in survival mode,
doesn't matter what we're putting up on Facebook. So we're at the point where we can probably go to our summary, kind of just a quick summary of what we've spoken about so far. And just takes me a minute to get here. There we go. So our feelings are okay, which is what you just said, Andrea. Our feelings are okay. Whoops. Sorry about that. But we cannot base our behavior on the feelings. And that's that reactive, that we can't just react. We have to slow down and respond thoughtfully. That first, ouch, give your partner the benefit of the doubt that maybe that first hurt was not intentional. They didn't mean it. So ouch, or wow, that was, whatever word you come up with. And you have to make dialogue. And that goes into peeling the onion, talking about your feelings. I feel I am this, I am hurt, I am angry. And are you building up or tearing down your relationship? So those are the basic summaries and takeaways from this. Is there anything you wanted to add or speak specifically about any of those?
Well, if we really care about the relationship, we can't indulge in this spiral. We can't really let this win, this natural tendency to retaliate and fight back, because it just makes it worse. You could probably ask any couple, how's that work for you? You're not going to get a resounding yes. And even if you think you have a victory for the moment, you're going to go off and, like we said before, go to bed with a loser. If you're trying to win, the relationship is losing. So these are all precepts and concepts that we're building. We don't use sarcasm. That never works. It's not going to work trying to make your partner feel weak, small, and ashamed. None of those things are going to build up. Like you said, it just tears down. So we have to caveat here, some relationships, there's people who can be to the extreme on the line where they are turtles. And we can't ignore or give your partner the impression, if you're being manipulated, or you're being verbally or physically in a situation, in a hurt cycle, this is a separate situation. And you do need to seek counseling. Sometimes it's even a situation where you might separate. Maybe it's not to the point where your life is in jeopardy, but you just can't live with someone. This process isn't working and someone's really being hurt. So I'm not advocating divorce right away, but there's times where you got to separate from that person if all you're doing is using this abusive situation where it's spiraling, or physical. So we do want to make mention here. We're not just trying to say, okay, this covers everything, folks. You just got to use these steps. There's times where there's degrees, and so you do need to get help. And this relates to every topic that we're talking about. The respect workshop, you know, essential. This is how we treat each other. So we learned about that with respect. Responsibility in the blame game. We don't need the accusing you when we're doing this process. We don't need a tone in our voice. We need to be empathetic. We need to be genuine. We need to be vulnerable, putting our feelings out to that other person. It's going to set the tone for our next two topics, forgiveness and trust. We're doing this in order with this topic because we're preparing for the tools that we're going to learn in the next two sessions. So we suggest it's really key, open dialogue, communicate. Good marriages, in good marriages, issues of disagreement are discussed, better solutions are agreed upon, and forgiveness is exchanged.
Yeah.
So would you bring the graphics back up again? Would you go back a couple, if you could?
Sure.
I just want to talk about, yeah, that one there's, no, that one's it. Go forward again.
This one?
No, that right there, the summary and takeaway. You know, doesn't that look easy? I'm reading that, it looks so easy to do, but it's not. The reason it's not is because we have emotion that is under our surface, that if we can't get past that to the rational side, then it's not going to work. And that's why waiting to discuss it sometimes is the best thing we can do. And going into that discussion, if we have cool heads and really listen and try to understand and continue to become a student of our spouse, then that makes it a little bit more, I'm not going to say easy, but we're able to get to the solutions that we're talking about through that dialogue process. So that's my last comment on this, that if we can do that, we'll make progress, because we do want to understand each other, and we want our relationship, our marriage, to thrive and not hurt.
Right. Good. Yes. Excellent. And that brings us to actually those questions that really you can work on throughout this week, which are, do I control my feelings, or do my feelings control me? Am I overly sensitive? When I don't feel loved or loving, do I justify my behavior, which I would otherwise be ashamed of? Which weapons do I use most often? Do I immediately translate hurt into anger and anger into retaliation? And am I inclined to assume my spouse has intentionally hurt me without first checking it out? And I think that's one that I think is easy to go to. You think, oh, they did that on purpose. I think that is very easy for many of us to make that assumption. So it really takes an effort to think, maybe they didn't do that intentionally. I'll just say, ouch. And it is, like you said before, Andrea, sometimes it can just stop right there. People and your partner might be like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything like that. It wasn't intentional. Oops. And then we can go to questions in relation to your spouse. Do I let my spouse know when he or she has hurt me, or do I assume that he or she should just know? That's a big one, isn't it? You should just know what I'm thinking. And yeah. And then get mad when you don't. So do I build a wall around myself and refuse to be vulnerable? Do I allow my spouse to abuse or intentionally and repeatedly hurt me? Am I in pain? And where does that pain come from? And how can I begin to communicate that without perpetuating the hurt spiral? Yeah. So Andrea, you had talked about that there's some important information that you wanted to share.
I think I pretty much covered a lot of it in the segment before your question. So, you know, I only have a couple more comments. And one thing I really like to say is I think we all need to take a look at kind of getting in the game of our marriage relationship. That's a choice. We have to participate. And I think too often we become so comfortable. A lot of those questions you just read are assumptions. which are really dangerous. We become comfortable that, well, I know how they feel, I know how they think, and we just become lazy. We don't want to take responsibility, and how important, I just can't say it enough, that this whole program says to me, the importance of using words. That it's a choice. We've been given the gift of speech, and to not participate, to hide from, run away from, or use the words wrongly as weapons. So learning the proper function for the words and choosing our words carefully and watching the tone of how we say things, they are all just choices, like daily type choices. And we shouldn't take that for granted. If we want a good marriage, what we choose to do with our words and the I statements and sharing from ourselves without judgment of the other person, that is what's going to build up the relationship. And if we don't choose it, our lack of speech or incorrectly is going to tear it down.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. And I just want to get to our final thoughts as we close out for this evening's topic. Okay, hold on a second. Sorry, guys. Sometimes I'm not as quick with this as I hope.
You got a lot of screens there.
I have a lot of screens. Let me just get down to it.
Good job, Sue.
There it is. There it is. So our final thought. Well, there we go again. Our final thoughts, and again, this is about self-change. And remember, if one person makes an effort to change, then the relationship will change. We always welcome comments, questions. I don't know, anything you want to share with us. There's our emails. You can comment on Facebook or on Twitter. And that there is the option to order the DVD or the streaming service so that you can get a more fully in-depth idea of the program. And, you know, hopefully any third option programs that might be in your area, hopefully if they aren't meeting in person, which they probably aren't right now, they might be doing Zoom sessions. So feel free to contact us. You can find out if there's an active program near you. If there's not, you know, you might be able to contact a church or organization there and bring it to their attention. Hey, can you bring this third option series to us? Can we start a group here? We think this would be really valuable to our community. So you can contact any one of us via email or on Facebook again. You can go to our website and find out about purchasing the program, whether for your personal use in your home or to try to set up a program in your area. And we'd love to hear from anybody. So Mike and Andrea, again, thank you for guiding us through the topics and giving us this information to help give us the skills for our relationships. Next week you had alluded to this, we go into topic 13, which is forgiveness and repair.
Well, thank you so much, Sue and Randy. Want to just say to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day. What would we do without dads and fathers? We appreciate them and all they do. And just want to say thank you.
Right. So everybody have a great day and a great week. And we'll be back again next week for forgiveness. And the thing to think about with forgiveness, it's a decision. So let's ponder about that, and we'll be back again next week.
For now.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye now.